Thank you for the warm welcome. I'm Shubha Subramanian, and I lead product for cLabs. And we have today's topic as Celo 2.0. And I'm really excited to actually take you behind the scenes with the folks who are uniquely qualified to do just that. With that, I'll first ask our panelists to introduce themselves very briefly.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Moreton. I'm the CEO at cLabs. I've been with the Celo ecosystem about 4.5 years now as one of the early technical team building out the Celo blockchain and proof-of-stake system.
Hi, everyone. Co-founder of Celo and CTO at cLabs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica. I'm on the cLabs product team, and I work on the blockchain.
All right. Just to kind of kick us off and maybe kind of get a show of hands from the audience, who here develops on Celo, who I guess doesn't. So maybe show of hands for who develops on Celo.
Woo!
Okay,
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the right
Nice.
choice.
And are there any validators here today? Okay, not really. All right. I'll get started with our first question. So we're going to talk about a bunch of developments that are coming along. But first, Tim, can you walk us through how you're thinking about the Celo community, its contribution to the success in the past year?
Yeah, so I guess just kind of like as a backdrop to the discussion, it's been a really like interesting and challenging year all at the same time. I think obviously there's the kind of macro circumstances which have been challenging for the whole industry. At the same time, like I feel like the Celo ecosystem has managed to catch this kind of like product community fit. There is this. I think Helena was talking about it on the refi session earlier. There's been like we get that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling that you get when you're doing a startup and you're like looking for product market fit and you're trying to find like a match between what you're building and like solving problems and the needs. And I think Celo has really managed to find that in the community space around the various like organizations building on top of the platform.
Sorry, and did you coin that, the product community fit?
That's for free for everybody. Yeah.
Okay. You heard it here first.
But it's also really interesting because some of these, some of these teams that we meet are like individuals who are just starting out and making this decision to build on Celo without even talking to like any of us. But then we're also, it's been great to see kind of large enterprises, even S&P 500 companies, like really get in on the action. And so I guess I will just quickly plug the T Challenge, which is an 8-month long. I mean, it's kind of like hard to call it a hackathon if it's 8 months long, but it's a sort of developer program for anybody looking to build on Celo, targeting mobile users and their experiences in Web3 by T-Systems, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom in conjunction with the Celo Foundation, cLabs, and other partners as well. So take a look at Celo's Twitter for that $600,000 in prize money.
Yeah, we highly
Euros,
encourage
right?
you to participate.
Probably euros.
Sorry. Okay, switching to Monica. Monica, can you tell us about the exciting news you have to share?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest update coming from the blockchain team is that we have a hard fork coming up next Tuesday. And the biggest change in the hard fork is updates to harden our consensus security. This will allow us to increase our block gas limit and ultimately increase our throughput, which we are super excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other change that we're making is updates to our RPC block representation. We heard developers loud and clear. This will help us let them use libraries that they find super useful, like Ethers.js. So stay tuned for those updates coming out next week.
Yeah, Marek, can you tell us why it's called Flan?
Yeah, I think thanks to you guys, right? So I think, as folks probably know, Celo has a history of naming hard forks after delicious treats from around the world. We had alfajores, cookies, we had baklava, And we found that desserts that have a corresponding emoji tend to do better as a name. And so I think this time around we were down to frozen yogurt, funnel cake, and flan. All had great emojis, and I think the community voted on it, and flan was the winning name. So yeah, hard fork flan. There's even a community member called Flan within the Celo ecosystem, so that person is also really, really excited. Pretty cool. Have a namesake hard fork.
Yeah, and when should we expect those changes?
Yeah, so the hard fork is currently scheduled for next Tuesday, November 8th at 8:30 a.m. Pacific. I don't think there were any validators in the audience, but if you are watching and you're supportive of the hard fork, please definitely upgrade by next Tuesday. And just to note that full nodes are not required to make this update.
Okay, just going behind the scenes, behind the name Celo 2.0 feels like it's like a really big label. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. So as everyone knows, mainnet has been live for about 2.5 years. We were the first EVM proof of stake chain and also the first carbon negative L1, which we're super proud of. But as we also know, Web3 doesn't wait around, and there is lots of innovation happening. We want Celo to be the best L1 to develop on, and an important part of that strategy is making sure that ReFi developers have the best tools to use.
So, you want to add something, Tim?
Yeah, I would just say as well, like, you know, we don't... Celo is a kind of living chain with lots of apps and users that are deployed on it, and people depend on it day in and day out. And so we don't kind of have the luxury of being able to start from scratch and like just roll a new chain. And so like we've been talking internally about Celo 2.0 because really is a kind of like representation of just how big an upgrade we are thinking this is going to be. It's been really interesting to see like the Ethereum merge recently, and like it was incredible to see how smoothly that went off. And yeah, hats off to everybody who was involved in that. But we're thinking of like the upgrade to Celo 2.0 as being like as substantial a potential challenge as the Ethereum merge.
Yeah, can you walk us through the strategy a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So our strategy has 3 parts. First, we want to scale transaction sequencing using Narwhal and Bullshark, which is a really exciting technology incubated at Facebook. And the second part of that strategy is having multiple subchains that will take advantage of that transaction sequencing. And lastly, we're really excited about enabling multiple VMs, such as Move, and taking advantage of that technology to parallelize transaction execution.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about Move as well?
Yeah, maybe before Move, it might be worth just touching a little bit on Narwhal and Bullshark. You know, I think it's interesting actually talking about scalability or hearing Haseeb and Avishal kind of go back and forth on whether or not scalability is important or not. We think at the platform layer, absolutely it's important. I think we know developers are looking for platforms that are future-proofs, that they know they can scale and grow with. And so we're working really, really hard to make sure that Celo meets the needs of all developers and their future use cases that will no doubt bring a lot of transactions per second or require a lot of transactions per second to the platform. And you know, I think there's a lot of excitement around you know, a lot of new chains that are coming out. Recently, Aptos came out using Hot Stuff as a consensus protocol. Narwhal you can think of as a scalable version of Hot Stuff. So it's Narwhal and Bullshark, I should say. It's a way of eliminating a certain bottleneck that exists in the Hot Stuff consensus protocol. And so there's a lot of now teams really excited about this new innovation, ourselves included. And so we've been spending a good amount of time recently looking at how to integrate it into Celo and how to upgrade into it using a future hard fork. And so it's really showing a lot of promise. I think in a bunch of experiments, folks have shown that you can scale transaction ordering to around 140,000 transactions per second using something like Narwhal and Bullshark. So that's a lot of throughput. Now, that doesn't include execution, which is harder to scale, and that's exactly why Monica was talking about subchains. One way to scale execution is to have multiple VMs. From an upgrade perspective, this is also appealing because we can experiment with different new data storage models, finality models that might be more applicable for certain use cases, might evolve as kind of new innovations in the broader industry. And we can do all that without necessarily having to do it on the main subchain. So we can actually experiment with a lot of different subchains. So we think this is a really cool and exciting, compelling model. We're seeing shared security and app chains and subchains, dApp chains, becoming a broader theme in the broader crypto space. And Celo is likewise moving in that direction to offer that scalability and flexibility for developers.
Yeah, thank you. Monica, you want to add something?
Yeah, and just to continue on Move, first and foremost, we're incredibly bullish and excited on Solidity. The tools and the ecosystem are really unmatched for developers, and we are going to continue to invest in the EVM toolchain. But as we also know, it's really hard to parallelize the EVM, and for Celo or Polygon or any other chain, there is a hard limit on the block gas limit that we can set for a single EVM. So really, we need to do more with smart contracts and bring more use cases on Celo. And to do that, we have to scale beyond a single core, which is why we are really excited about Move. Move's ability to parallelize transaction execution is really exciting. And that we think that coupled with Celo's low gas fees can be incredibly impactful for developers.
So yeah, I guess we are still confident in our ability to support Solidity while offering choices to developers on Move. So actually, bad pun, but I have to do it anyway. Moving on, I do want to talk about app chains. There's been a lot of debate and discussion about app chains, and then I guess the differences and the similarities between Ethereum and Cosmos, and I would love to hear what your thoughts on that, Marek.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think, I'm sure the audience here has been following, what's been happening in the Cosmos ecosystem and in the Ethereum ecosystem. We're getting to a stage now where individual dApps are starting to explore the idea of creating their own specialized chain for a particular use case. And typically the argument given for why this is worthwhile for these apps is that it allows you to develop across the whole stack, allowing you ultimately to try to create an experience that's going to be better than if you just developed on a very generic layer 1 platform. And fun fact, the Celo, in a way, actually started in a similar vein. So when we first started thinking about Celo 4 years ago, we actually tried to build a global Venmo wallet on Ethereum, but we couldn't quite build the experience that we wanted, which ultimately led us down to the path of building a layer 1 that had one block finality, that had scalability, that had a decentralized phone verification protocol so you can send value to phone numbers, that had a light client that realistically worked on mobile devices. And so, Celo is a lot more than just that. Today, it's become this rich platform with so many, new and exciting use cases built on top of it. But it started with this kind of full stack history. And so we definitely see the appeal for developers looking to perfect their end user applications to really take control of the whole stack. And I think this is another reason why this app chain model that we're looking into is actually interesting, because it allows developers to tinker at lower levels of the stack, but do so without sacrificing security. So having shared security, it's also something that now is becoming certainly popular with L2s on Ethereum, but also Cosmos now with Atom 2.0 is moving towards having Cosmos Hub offer shared security for those dApp chains. And so we think that this is a nice model. It fits really nicely with having Narwhal and Bullshark do transaction ordering, because again, we can order a lot of transactions. And so having multiple execution environments that can specialize to different app chains just feels very, very natural. And so then the only real challenge is making it so that folks can compose across these different app chains. And that's something that we're really looking into, ways to communicate between these app chains.
Yeah, Tim, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think Marek, you covered probably most of it. I think that app chains there's a lot of interest in them. I think they're very potentially compelling, where you have like certain classes of application where you need more control over certain parameters of the L1, where there are situations where the app is susceptible to like MEV, like the osmosis case is kind of an interesting one. Or where like the value in one particular app is very different from the transaction value in other apps, and you want to be able to kind of partition the block space there. So yeah, but I don't think it's for every app. I think you definitely lose in terms of developer experience, in terms of user experience, in terms of managing assets across environments, and just that composability as well. It's certainly something we've seen a lot of in like the growth of refi protocols and building blocks on Celo, is like the benefit of being able to easily kind of compose modules. So we're trying to, I think we're with Celo 2.0, we're exploring this really interesting trade-off where we can potentially allow apps to parameterize like a bunch of these things as they grow and move into a separate subchain. But for most apps where you benefit from that composability, you don't want to have to deal with like validator hot fixes, don't want to have to think about L1 tokenomics. I think like there's a much easier on-ramp. So yeah, I think key to it as well though is like, as Marek was saying, like the developer experience, I think also is such an important factor, and it's like an extension of really the challenge of building in Web3 at present, in terms of building an app that spans multiple chains. And so we're working closely with Hyperlane and others to investigate what kind of primitives and what kind of like semantics we can offer around making it as easy as possible to like call between app chains, and also looking for opportunities to be able to like create a stronger security model than your typical bridge in that environment. So yeah, work in progress.
Thank you for adding your thoughts to this debate. Tim, can you actually talk a little bit around tokenomics?
Yeah, I think before I talk about tokenomics, I'd love to talk a little bit more about Move. Sure. One of the other things, so I think Monica mentioned parallelization. I think that's a really big part. And so, you know, down the line, like part of this app chain choice is like, do you want an EVM or do you want Move? And so scalability is a really important part of that. But I think there's also this other area that it's other justification for why we're really interested in like the potential of Move is really, you know, we're seeing this, we're seeing like both ourselves as an organization that writes a lot of smart contracts, and in all of the teams of developers that we work with in the ecosystem, just this kind of agility challenge of like getting smart contracts audited and out into production. And we kind of see this kind of auditor trilemma where you can have, you know, an auditor that's either available or like good or cheap, and it's really difficult to kind of get more than one of those three like true. And this is a huge drag. I think we're probably we're seeing like the auditing cycle take like 3 times longer than the actual like design and development cycle for in terms of like the cost for a lot of the projects that we're working with. So we're a big fan of formal verification. We use formal verification methods like through partnership with Satora on Celo core contracts to like set invariants and be able to prove stuff to ourselves during the development process. it definitely caught a number of like nasty issues, and it resulted, I think, in the core Celo contracts being significantly more secure than if we'd have not done that. And Move is really interesting from that perspective, because not only does it include a whole bunch of like kind of built-in safeguards to help developers not shoot themselves in the foot in ways which is just far too easy to do, I think, in Solidity. But it also makes it easy to like add a fine-grained set invariants and reason about and prove like the code you're writing actually does what you think it does, which I think is so important and is going to help developers be able to produce projects faster that are more secure and with more confidence. So yeah, just wanted to add that. Sorry.
And maybe
Sorry.
just to add to that, I think Celo, while I think we're excited about experimenting with side-by-side move support, our commitment to the EVM and to Solidity is not changing. I think we picked Solidity early on, and the EVM early on is the VM of choice 2.5 years ago, because we're extremely excited about the developer tooling around Solidity, the amount of people who have learned Solidity, the amount of lines of code that have been written and audited in Solidity, and the amount of money that is being secured by smart contracts written in Solidity. And so I think our commitment to Solidity and the broader EVM isn't changing. We're just excited about the fact that there are new kind of compelling programming models and languages out there. And we want to offer a choice to our developers because we're hearing that some of them are also really excited.
Thanks. I hadn't realized earlier that we hadn't moved on from the topic. Sorry, I tried again. Can you talk about tokenomics?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, after the previous panel, I am no longer sure whether tokenomics is very important or not at all important. But in any case, like, we've had Celo mainnet since it was stood up by the community 2.5 years ago, has been like running pretty smoothly, and we haven't, like, as a community, really revised many parameters around like the token economic model, around like epoch rewards, who they go to, who benefits, and at kind of what rates. And so we felt it was probably time to like revisit some of those things. Some of the changes that we could make are small, and some are much larger. So cLabs put out a proposal a couple of weeks ago to look at raising the minimum gas price. And I think there's a lot of room in this. It sounds like, like, why would you do that? Aren't low fees one of the things that like sets Celo apart and makes it valuable? Well, yeah, but like at the moment they're kind of astonishingly low, and there's a lot of room for them to go up such that it's still possible to send a transfer between stablecoin transfer, even with stablecoins used as gas, for like less than a cent. And I think like we've always been like committed to that kind of like sketch level, and it's something that we really want to kind of ensure continues. But yeah, I think I see this as more of a kind of recalibration than anything else. So that's one thing, and I think that will happen. It's being discussed in the community forums right now. There's also an opportunity, I think, to make Celo ultrasound money. So we are already sound money. The supply cap for Celo is fixed at 1 billion. There's a exponentially decreasing emission schedule. As many of you know, we implemented EIP 1559 since mainnet launch.
Before Ethereum.
About a year before Ethereum did, and it's been working pretty well. The base of fees at the moment go into the community fund, which means obviously by putting up the transaction fee, we'll also be like getting more money for the community fund right now. But there is also an opportunity, I think, to like potentially just burn that base and It's not a particularly complicated change, but it has some really interesting implications in terms of the token economics of Celo. So this is, I guess, a preview. Like, we don't decide things here, the community decides things, but it's certainly something that we're pretty interested in exploring further.
Yeah, thank you so much for that a preview of Celo 2.0. And with that, I just want to open it up to see if anyone has questions here. Go for it.
Hey, so I got that Move as a way to parallelize computation. What is Move and who is developing it, and what would the adoption by Celo entail?
Yeah, so Move is a new smart contracting programming language. It borrowed a lot from Rust, but is much simpler than Rust. Initially was developed at Libra for Libra, later DM, but since then it's become a fully open. I think it was run already as a fully open programming language from the get-go, but since then it's now become a fully open source project with multiple companies now supporting it and contributing to it, which is pretty exciting to see. There's a few interesting things about what Move has done around protecting you from shooting yourself in the foot as easily as you can with other programming languages. But the other thing that certain folks are doing with it is making it easier to parallelize the execution of multiple transactions on each machine. So one way to get scalability is to have each node run multiple transactions or process more transactions per second than they can today. And a very standard way of doing that is to execute those transactions across multiple cores on each machine. Like, we have pretty big machines these days with hundreds of cores, and in most smart contracting languages today, Solidity included, are not very conducive to executing those across multiple cores, mostly because it's hard to detect ahead of time which transactions will conflict with each other. And so because Move intentionally limits what you can do in a smart contract, it makes it a little easier to determine these kind of read and write sets statically ahead of time, which then allows the scheduler to more easily execute these transactions in parallel on each full node contributing to the network. And so that's one interesting aspect, of Move.
Awesome, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Maybe one question for Tim. Oh, we have a question.
I've made like 10,000 MetaMask transactions. I haven't made a transaction on Celo. Why haven't I, how do I need to get green pilled? What do I need to know? What's my magic moment to make me make some Celo things happen?
Yeah, well, first of all, Celo supports MetaMask, so you can use MetaMask with Celo. I think it really depends what you're looking to accomplish. I think there's a fairly healthy DeFi ecosystem now on Celo that maybe is what excites you on other chains. Uniswap v3 is on Celo. It's
what is
Uniswap v3? I believe it's Celo's the only other layer 1 than Ethereum that Uniswap v3 supports. And so certainly there's a lot of interesting opportunities to trade on Celo. But more than that, I think there's some use cases that don't exist elsewhere. I think because you can pay for gas with a token on Celo, you can send stablecoins around more easily. So you can actually use stablecoins for payments really easily, and the recipient will never be stranded with an asset that they can't spend. That makes it particularly conducive for peer-to-peer payments. There's protocols that distribute aid using Celo. I think Impact Market's a really good example of this, where they've distributed millions of dollars now to tens of thousands of beneficiaries worldwide, including in places that are pretty adversarial. Afghanistan as a good example of this after the U.S. pulled out, and they picked Celo because after you distribute these funds, people can just transact like they would, like you and I might use Venmo here in the U.S. Because again, you can pay for gas with stablecoins, because Celo has a decentralized phone verification protocol that lets you send value to phone numbers even before the recipient signs up. And so it just is really conducive for P2P payments. The other big use case that I think is taking off now on Celo is just around refi. There's countless refi projects either live on Celo or developing currently on Celo. And we're really excited about the potential of refi. And so if that's something that you're interested in, I think I would highly check it out.
Thank you.
Recommend checking it out.
With that, thank you all so much for your time and attention.